Hi, welcome to Block Story Life, where we dive into the most intriguing stories from Reddit. Infidelity, transformations, deep emotions. Subscribe so you don't miss out on the most captivating stories. I playfully mocked him as weak and told him to keep an eye on me, and he became furious. Have you ever been in a situation where a little teasing spirals into a full-blown disaster? Maybe you did something wrong to someone, and they made sure you absolutely regretted it. Or perhaps someone went so far as to set a trap for you, carefully weaving a web of deceit over weeks, all to make you ruin your relationship. If you haven't been in a situation like that, count yourself lucky. Why am I saying this? Because I have been, and I think it might just ruin my relationship. I think my relationship is on the brink, but I don't want it to be over. My name is Emma, and I've got a story that might make you think twice before poking fun at someone. I'm posting here partly to vent, and also to see if anyone has advice. I'm 26, and my boyfriend Jack is also 26. We met on Tinder, discovered we went to the same college, hit it off instantly, and soon found ourselves in a serious relationship. We've been dating for about 5 years now. I truly thought he was the one I'd marry and spend my life with. Jack is a great guy, kind, caring, and always looking out for me. But one day, I made a playful jab, calling him weak in a moment of teasing. Little did I know that a harmless comment would set off a chain reaction of revenge and deceit. You might be wondering, why did you mock him? Honestly, I was partly just being playful, but there was also the fact that Jack had always been known for being a bit of a pushover. He went out of his way to please me and make me happy, so much that even a few of our friends would playfully tease me, calling him a pushover. He didn't mind and would even joke along with them. I guess I got used to Jack's love and devotion. He was like a rock in my life, always there to support me and put my needs before his. It's easy to get comfortable in a relationship, isn't it? You start to believe that things will always be the same and that your partner will always stand by you, no matter what. The day everything changed began just like any other. We were casually chatting, joking around about something or other. I honestly don't even remember the details. In the middle of our banter, I playfully teased Jack, saying he should watch his back because I might just leave him for someone else. It was meant to be lighthearted, a playful jab in the midst of our laughter. Jack laughed and said I'd never leave him, and I playfully replied that I just might. I told him he was weak and a bit of a pushover, so he should keep an eye on me. It was all jokes, honestly, but Jack's reaction surprised me. Instead of laughing it off, he went quiet. I felt a subtle shift in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. Looking back, I can see how insensitive my comment was. Jack had always gone above and beyond to make me happy, to show me his love. Looking back now, I realize how insensitive my comment was. Jack had always gone above and beyond to make me happy, showing me love in ways both big and small. Calling him weak in that moment was like dismissing everything he'd ever done for me. It was a wake-up call, not just for him, but for me too. It made me realize the weight of my words and the impact they could have on our relationship. But little did I know this innocent banter would set off a series of events that would change things between us. After my playful banter with Jack, things started feeling off. I noticed he wasn't as protective as before. A big change, since he used to always have my back, sometimes to the point of being overbearing. He'd ask about my day, check if I got home safe from work when he wasn't there, and generally be attentive. But after that conversation, it was like a switch flipped. He stopped checking in as often, texts became fewer, and calls were more sporadic. It felt like he had withdrawn, leaving this gap between us. I tried to write it off as work stress or something temporary, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. I started missing how he used to hold me close in crowds, making sure I felt safe. Now, it was like he had lost that protective instinct, leaving me feeling exposed, as if a safety net had been pulled away. I couldn't help but wonder if my teasing had pushed him away, if I had somehow caused this shift in our relationship dynamics. Since Jack and I lived together, our routine had been that he took on most of the household chores, even though he earned significantly more than me. He enjoyed cooking, cleaning, and doing the dishes, especially since he knew how much I disliked those tasks. It was a routine we had settled into, and it worked well for us. However, after that playful conversation, I noticed a change in Jack's behavior around the house. He stopped taking the initiative with the chores he used to handle gladly. Cooking became less frequent, his cleaning sessions were less thorough, and the pile of dishes in the sink started to grow. At first, I brushed it off, thinking he might be busy or preoccupied with work. But as days turned into weeks, it became clear that something had changed. Jack seemed less invested in our home life, almost as if he'd withdrawn from the little things that used to bring us joy. I tried to pick up the slack, but it wasn't the same. I missed the days when Jack would surprise me with a delicious dinner or clean the apartment just to make me smile. It felt like a part of our connection had faded, leaving a void in our shared responsibilities, and more importantly, in our relationship. At first, I must admit, I felt a sense of relief when Jack became less overbearing and didn't fuss over every detail of my whereabouts. It was liberating to go out with my friends without constantly updating him or worrying about his reactions. I could plan spontaneous weekend getaways or spend the night with my friends without feeling suffocated by messages or calls from Jack. It was like a breath of fresh air to have that space and independence. I could focus more on myself, pursue my hobbies, and reconnect with friends without feeling guilty or obligated to constantly check in with Jack. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I appreciated the newfound freedom in our relationship. However, as time went on, I began to realize that this newfound freedom came at a cost. The lack of communication and engagement from Jack started to feel like indifference. I missed the times when he would show concern or take an interest in my plans. The absence of his messages or calls, which I initially liked, now felt like a void in our connection. I started to question whether this shift in our dynamic was healthy for our relationship. While I enjoyed the independence, I also longed for the closeness and intimacy that had once defined our bond. As Jack's behavior continued to change, I started noticing the absence of those little gestures that used to mean so much to me. He stopped opening the car door for me, something he always did without fail. It may seem like a small thing, but those acts of chivalry were symbols of his care and attention. Moreover, Jack's attitude towards finances shifted as well. He earned significantly more than I did, and used to take care of our financial needs without complaint. If I needed money for shopping or other expenses, he would provide it without hesitation. It was a comfortable arrangement that worked well for us. However, after what happened, Jack's generosity seemed to drop. He became more frugal with his money, and I found myself having to ask for financial support, something I'd never had to do before. This created a sense of unease and dependency that I wasn't accustomed to. I felt as if I had lost not only his emotional support, but also the financial security his income provided. The lack of these small but meaningful gestures and financial support added to the growing distance between us. As the distance between Jack and me grew, I found myself seeking validation and attention elsewhere. It started innocently enough, just casual conversations and harmless flirting with people I met socially or online. These interactions provided a temporary distraction from the emptiness I felt in my relationship with Jack. But as time went on, I noticed I was seeking these interactions more frequently. The attention and compliments I received from others filled a void that was growing deeper within me. It was as if I craved that sense of being desired and appreciated, something that seemed to be missing in my relationship with Jack. And I know you might be thinking, why didn't you just try to talk to Jack? Well, when I tried, he brushed off my concerns, even gaslighting me into thinking I was overthinking or projecting my insecurities onto our relationship. He would invalidate my feelings, make me doubt myself, and question whether I was being irrational. This only made things worse. I felt unheard and misunderstood, and it pushed me further towards seeking validation outside of my relationship. As time continued to pass, the distance between Jack and me only seemed to widen. Despite my efforts to mend our relationship, nothing seemed to work. Jack had closed himself off emotionally, and no matter how hard I tried to communicate or reconnect, it felt like hitting a wall. The frustration and loneliness I felt reached a breaking point, and as you might have guessed, it led to a moment of weakness where my harmless flirting crossed the line into full-on cheating. It was a mistake I deeply regretted, and I knew it was wrong. It happened only once, but the guilt still weighs heavily on me. What makes matters worse is that I didn't confess to Jack about my infidelity. I was ashamed and afraid of his reaction. I knew it would devastate him, and I couldn't bear to see the pain in his eyes, so I kept it hidden. The realization of how far apart Jack and I had drifted hit me like a ton of bricks when I found out about his huge promotion and the house he bought without informing me. It was a devastating blow, and the way I found out made it even more painful. I still remember the shock and embarrassment I felt when our mutual friends casually mentioned Jack's promotion and his new house in conversation. I was taken aback, not just by the news itself, but by the fact that Jack hadn't deemed it necessary to share such significant milestones with me, his partner. What made it sting even more was that we had always talked about getting a house together. It was a dream we both shared, and I had imagined us taking that step as a couple. The realization that Jack had gone ahead and made such a major decision without involving me felt like a betrayal of our shared dreams and aspirations. So, I decided to confront Jack, and it was a turning point that shattered any remaining illusions I had about our relationship. I realized that he had been pushing me away and gaslighting me, making me doubt my own feelings and perceptions. Confronting him was supposed to be a moment of clarity, a chance for us to address our issues and work toward a solution. However, I'm sure you've guessed it didn't go as I'd imagined. Jack's response was unexpected and hurtful. He accused me of disrespecting and insulting him, using that as justification for his changed behavior. He argued that he'd always been the one putting in the effort and saw no point in continuing a relationship where his efforts went unappreciated. What cut deepest was when Jack revealed that he knew about my infidelity. It was like a dagger to my heart. Realizing he had found out about my mistake and had been holding it against me, he was very angry, and then he stormed off. Now, I feel like I'm at a crossroads, as if I'm losing, or have already lost, the relationship that once meant everything to me. Yes, I made a mistake, but it was born out of feeling neglected and unappreciated. Jack may have been a bit soft in some ways, but he was a good partner, and I didn't want him to stop caring or putting effort into our relationship. Updates. Hello, Reddit. It's been a while since my first post, and I've received many requests for an update, so here I am. I want to address some of the comments and DMs I received after my previous post. First, I want to acknowledge the hurtful comments and messages. They were painful, and I understand that my actions have consequences. A lot of people said I was trying to tell the story in a way that painted Jack as the villain, but no, I'm not trying to make him out to be the bad guy or to absolve myself of responsibility. I know I made a mistake, and I take full accountability for it. Many of you suggested couples therapy and individual therapy, and I appreciate those suggestions. It's something I've been considering as I realize the need to work on myself and our relationship. Regarding financial dependence, I agree that it wasn't wise to rely entirely on Jack. I work in a field that, honestly, doesn't pay well, and with Jack being more financially stable, he took on more responsibilities. It became a pattern, and I got accustomed to it. However, I should have been more responsible and financially independent. Jack had always been more financially smart, and with him being the man in the relationship, I just left things up to him. Some comments mentioned that cheating is a deal breaker, and while I understand that perspective, every relationship is unique. Cheating was a mistake on my part, and I regret it deeply. However, I believe in forgiveness and second chances, especially if there's genuine love and commitment. I believe Jack will forgive me. We've been together for a very long time, and he knows that my cheating was a mistake, and I know he'll get over it. Ultimately, I'm here seeking advice and guidance. I want to know if there's a way to rebuild trust and salvage what's left of our relationship. I'm aware that Jack may not forgive me easily, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends and work towards a better future together. It's crazy how some folks on social media jump to conclusions about me just from a few posts. They're calling me narcissistic, unfeeling, and entitled without really knowing me or my story. They act like they've got it all figured out, saying I'll see things differently when Jack leaves me. But relationships are way more complicated than that. You can't judge someone's life from a few online posts. I texted Jack, and he says he's on his way home. We're probably going to talk, and I'll update on that. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again. I feel it's important to keep you updated, so here's the latest. Jack returned home, and we had a much-needed conversation. I suggested couples therapy as a way to work through our issues, but Jack was leaning towards breaking up. I had to plead with him not to give up on us just yet, and to give therapy a chance. We agreed that if therapy didn't help, we would then consider breaking up. Despite the challenges, I still love Jack and want to salvage our relationship, so I'm cautiously optimistic. Plus, there's the practical aspect. I rely on him for a lot of things. We found a therapist with excellent reviews and booked our first session. I'll keep you posted on how it goes. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm back with another update. Despite the negativity I faced here, lots of DMs and comments, I believe it's important to keep you all informed. Our first therapy session was a bit rocky. Jack had been keeping to himself a lot, and despite my efforts to engage him with special nights out or deep conversations, he still remained distant and reserved. We even had an argument during this time, which was about money. I asked him for some financial help, which he declined. In our first session, we discussed various issues and challenges. I brought up Jack's reluctance to share money and his emotional distance. I also mentioned how sensitive he seemed about a playful comment I made. However, the therapist pointed out that Jack's feelings were valid and that it was okay for him to express emotions like anyone else. We went through a few more therapy sessions, and it became clear things weren't improving as we had hoped. Jack opened up about how he'd always felt he was the one putting in significant effort into our relationship, shouldering responsibilities, and trying to make me happy. He told me that my comments hurt him deeply, especially when I mocked him as weak, and he admitted that he purposely tried to gaslight me because he was so hurt. In our last session, Jack finally came clean. He wanted to break up. He mentioned he'd been working on the house, he bought the house, and now that it was ready, he planned to move in there. To be honest, hearing that news left me in a panic. I relied on Jack for so much financially and emotionally. Without his support, I wouldn't be able to afford the lease on my own. The rent was simply too high. Moving back in with my parents wasn't an option either, given how crowded their house already was with my siblings and their families. Plus, I didn't really have any friends who would let me move in. I was feeling desperate. I pleaded with Jack to reconsider, to give our relationship a few more chances through therapy. Deep down, I knew that losing him would drastically change my life, and I wasn't sure how I would navigate everything ahead without his presence and support. There was no hiding it. I was broke, and without Jack, I would definitely fall. As much as I begged, Jack remained firm in his decision to break up. He expressed regret, but explained that he needed to move forward with his life without me. In the following days, he came over to pack his belongings. I tried everything to stop him, from emotional appeals to even attempting to physically restrain him, but that only seemed to anger him more. What made matters worse was that I had already spent my last paycheck and was in a financial bind until next month. Desperation setting in, I reached out to our mutual friends for help. I told them Jack was leaving me, but didn't disclose the full truth about the cheating, knowing they'd likely blame me if they knew. I asked them to talk to Jack, hoping they could convince him to reconsider. Instead of mediating, our friends bombarded Jack with calls and messages, pushing him until he revealed the truth about my infidelity. That must have changed their perception completely, because they turned against me, criticizing me for not being honest with them and saying it was awful that I had intentionally omitted such important information. The betrayal I felt from both Jack's departure and our friends' reaction was overwhelming. I felt like I was running out of options, so I turned to our parents for help. I begged my parents to intervene and speak to Jack, hoping they could convince him to reconsider or at least provide me with financial support to cover the rent and bills until I figured things out. I also reached out to Jack's parents, hoping they'd understand and help mediate the situation. However, things didn't go as planned. I'm not sure what Jack told them, but both sets of parents turned against me. They were disappointed in me and echoed the sentiment that I was to blame for the situation. It was disheartening to see them take Jack's side without offering any support or understanding. After trying everything, I reached out to Jack directly, hoping he'd understand, but he accused me of trying to ruin his reputation and said any sympathy he had was gone. Feeling desperate, I even went to Jack's workplace to talk, but he threatened a restraining order instead. It's surreal that after all this time together, he's serious about ending things completely. Now I'm stuck, with friends and family turned against me, and Jack refusing to help. I'm at a loss for what to do next. It's tough and uncertain, and I'm really struggling to figure things out. Any advice would be appreciated. Update. This is probably my last update. Things have been really tough, and the negative comments and messages have been getting to me. People are calling me crazy and delusional and say I'm stuck in my own head. A lot of people even expressed sympathy and pity for Jack, more than for me, saying they would have probably gone ahead with a restraining order if they had an ex like me. Honestly, I was hoping for some understanding or support, but it's clear that's not happening. It feels like everyone has turned their backs on me, and I'm in a really tough spot. Next month's rent is a big question mark. I might not be able to afford it with how expensive things are here in my state, especially with the housing crisis, and finding a roommate hasn't been easy. If I can find someone to share expenses with, maybe I won't have to move out right away. But so far, no luck. Thanks to those who followed my story and offered advice. It's been a wild ride, and I appreciate the support. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing.